Welcome to the Own Your Life podcast, where our goal is to help bring hope, healing, and peace by sharing our experiences and inspiring you to own your life. Hey everyone, welcome to the Own Your Life podcast. Today we have a special guest with us, very special couple to us that we've known for a little over 3 years now, and we've really cherished our friendship with them. They have a beautiful family, 2 twin girls, a boy, and a new puppy. And fun fact is that we actually have the same anniversary date as them, which is really cool. And over these past few years, we've seen just how strong that they've been in their faith and their personal growth journeys. And these faith warriors are Billy and Heather Harris. And without further ado, I give them to you if you guys want to expand on your backgrounds and whatnot.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks guys. Hey, Own Your Life podcast. Yes. Great to be with you guys. Thank you, Matt and Ashley Crick, for just inviting us on. We're really honored. Just really means a lot to us. We love Matt and Ashley. They are 2 of our favorite people in the whole world. Like Ashley said, we do share the same anniversary. October 4th, 2003 is when Heather and I were married.
Yep.
Matt and Ashley were married October 4th.
2014.
Yeah.
2014.
A little bit later.
A lot later on than 2003. So that was what I was going to say. So, it's great. We love Matt and Ashley. Background, we actually, Heather and I are both originally from the Washington, D.C. area. I grew up in Alexandria, Virginia. She grew up in Laurel, Maryland. And we now live in a little town called New Oxford, Pennsylvania, which is near Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. We do have, like Ashley said, we have identical twin girls who are 11 and a 7-year-old son. And then we have a 4-month-old little puppy. So we're excited about that. And you want to tell our professional backgrounds and all that stuff?
Yeah. So I've been a stay-at-home mom now for a little over a year, but prior to that, I had 20 years in the dental field. I started out in orthodontics in particular, and then moved into dental and oral surgery before I finally just decided to be home with our kids, which has been amazing. In regards to just for me personally, my faith background, I grew up in a faith-filled home. That's what I came from. So we were always going to church on Sundays. I came from a Lutheran background. So anybody familiar with that? It's a little bit watered down version from Catholic. So, but we went every Sunday and talked about God all the time in our house. So, I just grew up knowing there was always a God, and I grew up knowing that within God, there was Jesus. So, but I can't honestly say I ever really took ownership of my faith until I was out of high school. I started working in the real world and started encountering real world things. And I think that's what then allowed me to start connecting more to my faith, in particular more to Jesus. And so it never really was like this, for me anyway, coming from a background of, is there even a God, to, oh, there is. And like now I didn't have that glamorous transition. I didn't have a glamorous aha moment that all of a sudden I was saved by Jesus. I feel like I always kind of was, but I never really applied it in my life until I got into the real world. And I did. I mean, my parents did a great job of having have an older brother, and we grew up in a very Pollyanna world, and I'm thankful for my parents that they've provided that for us. So we were pretty shielded and guarded. But then I think the challenge that then happened for me was when I got into the real world, I realized, it wasn't as Pollyanna. Everybody wasn't as faith-filled as I thought they were. And so that's really what engaged my faith. And I think understanding too that, for me, faith became like a verb. Like it had to be an active thing on my part, that just because I was a Christian didn't mean I automatically had faith, that I needed to start applying myself to it. I needed to actively work on that relationship. And I think the more I've started to grow in that and grow in my own journey with that, and understanding that I I don't deserve this. Like, I don't deserve this. And I think I kind of had this entitlement with my faith, like just because I was a Christian, like it was automatic that when I prayed, God would answer my prayers. And so like, if he didn't answer my prayers, then I'd be like, God, what's going on? Like, you're not hooking me up here. Like, you're not giving me this like Christian hookup. So like, do you really exist? And I think that's when I had to go through a season that he humbled me in my faith journey, because he's like, no, like, I don't owe you squat. Like, I don't. But because I love you so much, I did send Jesus. But just because things aren't going the way you've prayed for, like, let's take a hot minute and realize, like, you're not the one in charge here. And maybe just in fact, the reason why you're going through something that you didn't pray for, there's purpose behind that of who I need you to become for me. And I think once I started wrapping my being around that and understanding that, like, whoa, my faith walk is just because I'm a Christian doesn't mean I have an active faith. And that all started, thankfully, from the real world and starting a job and, being around non-believers really put my faith in check. So that's some of my background.
Yeah, awesome. Like, I have a very different background. So, it's funny how God works, right? It's funny how God, together in a lot of areas, but also with faith. So, my mom grew up Southern Baptist, like old school Southern Baptist. She's originally from Georgia, they call it, and all my relatives on her side are from the South, like North Carolina, Alabama. LA, which is not Los Angeles, that's actually lower Alabama. Yeah, so people from the South know that one. So she was very old school Southern Baptist, church every Sunday, you know what I mean? My dad, however, was basically raised himself on the streets of Washington, D.C. His mom had a lot of issues. His dad was off in the military a lot. So he was just a guy that kind of sports was the thing that kind of saved him and kept him out of trouble. So he wasn't a bad guy. He just really he had no faith. Like he wasn't anti-faith, but he wasn't like, he just didn't know anything, right? If that makes sense. Like so that's kind of the background he grew up in. Well, my dad actually became a born again Christian in his 30s. Actually, probably, I think he was 35, and I was just a little kid. And that was the point of my life that actually changed really the whole course of my faith, because I think when my dad became a Christian, it gave me somebody as a man that I could see, like, and his faith journey was very raw and very real and very, I think there's a lot of people that are what I call, there's people that are like event Christians, right? Like they know the day they became a Christian, right? The day they accepted Christ into their life. And then there's other people, I think like Heather was more like this, that are like process Christians. Like they just kind of become a Christian over time through a process. My dad was definitely an event Christian. Like he knows the day, the place, everything. So that really kind of changed the whole course of our family. And as a result, like I grew up in a great Christian home. And I remember being at like a church service, a big giant church service when I was probably 10, 11, 12, probably around the age my daughters are now. And the gentleman on stage like gave like an altar call, right? Like he, hey, if you want to accept Jesus into your life. And I remember I said those words and I said, hey, Jesus, come into my life. I need you as my savior. And I thought, man, that's awesome. That's great. I'm good to go. Right. Well, then the problem is we're stuck, we're thrown back in the world, right? When that happens. And I was definitely the Christian who was very worldly. Like I was the Christian who would, when we would be at church, right, and I would be around like my parents' church friends and their Christian friends, they thought I was like Mr. Jesus, right? Like, you know what I mean? They all wanted their daughters to date me because I'm so great. But then when I would go hang out with my sports buddies, right, who were not Christians, and I would be playing ball and that kind of stuff, it's almost like I would put God back up on the shelf, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, hey, God, like right now at this part of my life when I'm hanging out with the fellas and we're out, doing some worldly stuff, I'm not really down with you right now, but I still want you for the times of my life that I do want you, right? So that was me. And then sort of that's my quick little testimony. Probably in my early 20s is when I stopped that. I was like, hey, I need to be a man of integrity. If I'm going to follow God, I need to follow God. And that's when I really took a big detour and a big, kind of 180 turn started living my life in a way that was completely 100% for God. Obviously, we're all sinful beings, right? We all still sin and have times where we fall, but that has, from that point on, God has been the number one thing in my life, my relationship with him. And then second would be my marriage to Heather. And then from there would be my, my relationship with my kids. And then everything else is beyond that. So, yeah, that's kind of a quick little faith background for us. So now you guys know us a little bit. So
awesome. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Yeah, Matt and I are definitely event Christians. We remember the time and place and date and all that. So we have very, very different backgrounds for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and I think for me, as far as backgrounds, my parents were I call it the holiday event Christians. We would go to church maybe on Easter and Christmas, and that's about it. And so we didn't really have a whole lot of that. And even then, later on in my childhood years, my mom actually was working on those holidays. So we actually ended up just not going at all. Right. And sometimes my dad would work as well, even on Christmas. So, we actually ended up not, in my later years, we actually ended up not going to church at all. And it was kind of different as far as that was concerned. So, and I think that something you said, Billy, kind of hit with me is that I think as men, I don't know, and the ladies can answer this, and this is kind of off topic. So it just kind of hit me. But I think as men in our early 20s, we're kind of going to do what we're going to do. We'll stretch the truth a little bit. We'll do certain things to, fit in. We'll do certain things that aren't necessarily the best at the time. And then kind of in your later 20s, you kind of figure out, hey, I need to be kind of more truthful, more integrity based, and kind of figured that out because at the time you're going to do the quick fix in your early 20s to get the results. And then in your later 20s, you want to be held as a man of character. So now you're trying to develop your character at a later time, but now you have to back up on some of the stuff that you've done in your early 20s. So that's kind of hard for people to buy into that. And then in your middle 30s, then you're kind of like, I'm kind of figuring this out, but I'm really not necessarily sure. I know I have a family and I need to kind of be the best I can be. Right. And then you kind of figure out that, you don't really have everything figured out, and that some of the people that were speaking into your life in your earlier 20s maybe weren't so dumb, and that you need to go back to those people for some more advice. And I thought that was kind of interesting that you said that, because I've been thinking a lot about that this week. Wow. And that kind of hit home with me.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, awesome. That's cool. And I think, some of it is as a man really, and as a woman too, I think you don't really, you have to, the only way you can really appreciate the grace of God is, unfortunately, to do things where you don't deserve his grace, if that makes sense. So and I don't think you can really truly appreciate how and be truly thankful and grateful for this gift that Christ, that he died for me, for my sins. And you can't really appreciate it on the level until you kind of fall away from him a little bit, right? Or sometimes fall away from him a lot, right? And, some of the people that have the greatest faith and the greatest appreciation for God's grace and are the people who have strayed the furthest away, right? But at some point, like I know for me, the point I got to was where I always knew God would take me back, right? And I always knew, I believed that grace was real. And I believed that no matter what I did, he would take me back, but I would just kind of keep doing this ping pong back and forth thing. Like, hey, God, I know you'll take me back, so it's okay if I do this, right? Yeah. But then the breaking point that I reached was where the appreciation for the grace that he would give me was higher than like that like forgiveness, if that makes sense. Like I started to like respect almost and appreciate that grace so much that then I didn't want to, disappoint him and go in that direction. So anyways, that.
Yeah. And I think from my perspective, I was scared to kind of go through those different seasons, because I don't know if it was just growing up Lutheran and that background, or it was just my own personal interpretation. But like, I felt like in the beginning stages, like I didn't want to do wrong, because I felt like my actions contributed to like if I was a good Christian or not. Like it affected my relationship with God if I did things right. And I naturally by temperament can fall in that perfectionism side. And I've had to really work to overcome that. And so I'm like, I was scared to do wrong things because I didn't want to get knocked down in God's graces because of certain things I did that I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, so if I do that, then now that means I'm going to have to do X, Y, Z to get back into good graces with God. And so that's how I lived for a really long time, where I was scared to like Billy talked about, put him on the shelf, then bring him back out. I was like, no, I don't want to do that, because I felt like Christianity was based around what I did. And I don't know, I guess it like created a better relation. Like I felt like that's what it did. So yeah, I was kind of that I was that perfectionist Christian.
Yeah.
Where I
She was the perfectionist Christian.
Yeah.
I was the one who was like, man, I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's going to take me back. So what's the big deal kind of thing? You know what I mean? Like, and that's okay, because he will always take us back.
Yeah.
You know, if you read the Bible, like there's nothing we can do that where if we, you know, come to him with a repentant heart and ask for forgiveness, like there's nothing in the world that could separate us from his love. But that's not a good excuse to continue to do those things. And, you know, at some point you've got to realize that honoring him and respecting him with how you live your life is more important than the fact that he'll always take us back. So again, it's different perspectives. Like,
and I think for me on that perfectionism side was getting to the point where I realized, wait, Heather, like if God is expecting me to be perfect and he's expecting me to literally never lie, never do any sin whatsoever, so I stay in good graces with him, what was the point of Jesus?
What was the point of the cross?
Like, why did Jesus even need to come? Because so there's absolutely no possible way that I could be perfect. And there's no absolute possible way I could be perfect in my faith. And God knew that, which was the whole reason why Jesus had to come. So I think once I grasped that and took that moment, that honestly released me to be able, I think, Matt, what you were talking about, to go through the proper channels of my faith. Like, I feel like because I was striving so hard to be that perfect Christian, it stunted my faith growth, because I didn't allow myself to make mistakes, which then caused me to realize I need God even more right now. Like with what Billy was talking about, like I refused to even go there. Like I thought, no, I'm good. Yep. And I think now the fact that I've embraced the fact that the more I'm imperfect, the more I need him. So
yeah, we're getting super deep, man.
I know.
Super deep.
No, this is right.
Like going way off the train.
Matt and Ashley, you guys are
actually answering a lot of the questions that we had. So
you knew what you were getting when you asked Billy and Heather to come on. Like, we like to go super deep. So you know.
Well, and I think a part of that too comes with wisdom. I mean, I think that sometimes until you grow enough to have some wisdom, you can't lean on anything, because I mean, for me personally, I know that I didn't necessarily get saved until I was in my 30s. Wow. So for me, like, I didn't necessarily have any wisdom to lean on. And I also needed somebody, because my dad didn't really do what your dad did.
Right.
So he was a Catholic in his upbringing, but they necessarily didn't do a whole lot. So, you know, we didn't have a whole lot of faith around that. So I had to find somebody in my life that had wisdom in that area and be able to lean on them a little bit and get some outside perspective as well. Yeah. So some people never really run into those individuals with that type of character or that type of wisdom in that area as well.
That's a great point. Such a great point, man. Wisdom, like, you know, like people who are Christians, like you can accept Jesus as your savior, but developing the wisdom of God is a whole different process, right? You don't, when you accept Jesus as your savior, you do receive salvation, right? Eternal life, like he has forgiven you, like you are good, right? And this is all my opinion, but my opinion is based on, if you read the Bible, right? You're good to go, but that doesn't mean that he also drops a whole bunch of godly wisdom into your head too, like right from automatic, from Jump Street, right? Like the wisdom, and all wisdom is making good decisions. Like, and you know, what kind of decisions would God want me to make here? You know what I mean? And part of the challenge with that is, like Matt and Ashley, you guys were event Christians, right? Like you literally like changed like in a moment. Well, your wisdom is still needs time to catch up, because you still have the weight of the world that you had before that. It's still there. It doesn't just disappear. Like you're forgiven and you're saved and you have a place in heaven with God, but the wisdom is a process. And, that's like Matt said, getting around people that can teach you, hey, what would a man of God, what kind of decision would he make in this instance? And, learning, you have to learn what those things would be, right? Because you don't have that, obviously, reading the Bible, getting into that and studying God's word. But, that was one of the points that I had on here that, I was going to share, was having a community, like a support community, is super important for your faith in whatever way. Obviously a church, but even beyond a church, right? Like something that you can interact with and engage in potentially daily, right? Like more than just yourself, like having a community. I know, Matt and Ashley, they're a part of a community with us. That's, where we're growing ourselves, and we're growing our faith, and that helps us tremendously. I know it helps Matt and Ashley as well, grow our faith, because you're hearing other people's journeys, other people's decisions that they've made, the wisdom they've developed. And that support community is so key, especially obviously in tough seasons, which is kind of what we're talking about today. Like, if you don't have a support community in tough seasons, you and God are enough, but it's going to be even more challenging if you don't have a community to support you. So,
because I know one of the things I think we're going to talk about here in a little bit, but like just talking about 2020 in general, and how hard it's just been for everybody, and a faith tester for everybody.
Extremely.
Exactly.
You want to test your faith? Here's the year.
Welcome 2020.
Ticket. Yes. But I heard on a sermon a few weeks back, when we were going through a really tough moment for us in 2020, that like, if you don't have that kind of support system, like sometimes your faith isn't strong enough. And prayer is so powerful. Prayer is so powerful. And so when you're feeling weak in your faith, one of the top things you can do is lean in to your friends, family members who have an active relationship in Christ, and like, hey, can you pray for me? Because I'm not feeling strong right now, but I know that you are, and you can pray for me in this situation. And that was a moment that really hit home for Billy and I, of how important it was to have a community to lean into, and to have friends to lean into that could pray for us when we were feeling so weak. There's just power there. There's power in having those relationships. So
great point.
I know we've talked about that before on the podcast, that you need to find other people. Like we're not made to be alone and to live alone, and we need relationship. And through those relationships, that's how we can hold each other accountable and really pray for each other and continue to grow together. I just think that's so important that you guys talked about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and sometimes I think we need to realize that sometimes the problems that we're given aren't necessarily meant to be solved.
Amen.
Right. Yeah, it's great point.
And I think that in this 2020 season, I think a lot of people are running around trying to solve a lot of problems that aren't meant to be solved right now.
Right.
And sometimes what you talked about, leaning into a community, leaning into your faith, leaning into the word, is all a part of that. But that comes with what we talked about earlier too, is the wisdom of knowing that as well. And I think that's been the toughest part for me this year. Is I'm a solver, as Billy and I already know that we're solvers. You know what I mean? We got those.
Fix it.
We got those shirts.
You want something solved? I'm your guy. You know what I mean?
But sometimes it's just what we've had to learn in our relationships with these two lovely ladies, and with this season, is just learning to listen and learning to ask enough questions and lean into the wisdom and the word in this season has been tough for me in this season.
And I know, Matt, it's a great point. I think one of the things I've learned this year, and I think Heather's even learned too, because she's a perfectionist. She's a solver too, right? She likes to, maybe this isn't ours to solve. You know what I mean? Cause I hear God saying to me a lot, hey, I got you. Like, you just need to be still, like, keep trusting me. Like, maybe if Billy, hey, if you're the guy to solve this, what do you need me for? You know what I mean? Like, and that's a faith. Again, it's very easy to say you have a faith in God. Well, if you always want to do everything yourself, then what do you need a faith in God for? Right. You know, and that's, but just believing that, hey, some of these things maybe, you know, God just wants us to, you know, be still, trust him, and just know that this is his to solve. Right. And I just need to, as a man, focus on what do I need to, you know, improve in and grow in and that kind of thing. So,
yeah. And I'll keep it real too. Like, you know,
we appreciate that.
during 2020,
mom of twins, they always keep it real.
If anybody else can relate to this, but I feel like God has been so absent in my prayers. Like, I feel like he's been silent a lot. In my prayers.
Like, you still there?
Yeah. Still there? And I heard, again, on this powerful sermon that I've been listening to this week, one of the things the pastor said was, in the absence of answers, faith is born. In the absence of answers, faith is born. And if one thing too I can attest to in 2020 is all this time that I'm feeling like God ain't answering me, and I know I'm praying, and things are happening that I didn't pray for, and I'm like, what in the world is going on? Why do we keep getting hit left and right and whatever else? I can't deny the fact that one thing that's coming out of 2020 is how much my faith has grown, because in all of this absence that I felt that he's had with me is actually the opportunity that has drawn me closer to him. That without a season like this, I would have done exactly what Billy talked about. I would have gone around thinking, nope, I'm good. I got this. Like, I can, sure, I can handle, you know, situations that come around. I've got it. But when 2020 has been situation after situation, it really exposed to me my own personal faith and the lack that it was. And I'm like, wait, this is drawing me even closer to God. And, you know, it makes me think about too, like, kind of, Matt, what you were talking about, like, Jesus did that to the disciples all the time, where he just was like, nope, sorry, this is above your pay grade. You just don't need to know this right now. You don't need to know right now. Like, that's awesome. You're asking all these questions.
Like, I'm God and you're not.
Yes. And for me,
and I'm going to remind you of that right now.
And I'm a planner. I like to know what's coming an hour from now, a week from now, a month from now. Like, give it to me. I want to know it all. And, you know, and I think sometimes too, that's like God just reminding me, like, Heather, 2020 is just above your pay grade. Like, you do not need to know all that you think you need to know. And just like Billy just said, like, besides, if you really did know, would your faith have grown as much?
Amen.
You did know what I had planned through all of this. And I think that's, to put a period on everything that I've been saying in this right here, is that I think just understanding that in all things, God promises to make things right. To make things right. We have free will. We make stupid decisions, but in all things, God makes things right somehow, some way. And I think that's the hope that I've been holding on to. So,
so two quick points, if I can, on that. Like,
knock it out.
And down was, so faith isn't faith until it's tested.
Amen.
Yeah.
So, like, everybody, again, it's great in theory to say, oh yeah, I'm a Christian unbeliever. I have this great faith. Well, let's see what happens, Billy, right? Matt, Ashley, Heather, when it's tested, right? Like, I know Matt was an awesome football player. Like, you know, football is a big part of my life. Like, I remember when I was playing and when I was coaching, like, I never knew what I had next to me, right? Or even what I had inside of me until it was tested on the field. Like, you can practice all you want. We can sit in meetings, right? We can watch a million rolls of film. Like, we can do all this stuff, but until, like, it's tested on the field, like, you don't know, right? Like, what you have. And then, which is what's crazy, is if you read the Bible, that's exactly, like, every single person that God used in the Bible to do great things, right? Every single person, he put them, all of them went through major tests, right? It's almost like he was like, okay, let's see what I got here. Do I have what I think I have here? You know, I mean, you can name them off. Obviously, Jesus, right, went through the most tests of anybody. Paul, right? Like, I mean, you know, Peter, Moses, David, right? King David, Joseph, like, you can just list them all, right? Every one of them went through tough seasons. So here's the second thing. Here's a question I wrote down the other day. Like, everybody's talking about 2020 and how, you know, hard it's been, and it has, you know, right? I mean, let's not lie. And, like, that's one thing we have learned too, is let's be real with our faith with God. Like, let's not try to hide from God. Like, oh no, God, this is awesome. No, if it sucks, like, tell God that it sucks.
Right now.
Like, if you're mad at him, if you're angry with him, like, he's big enough to handle our emotions.
That's how we roll anyway.
Yeah. And this took us a long time to get to. We thought it was wrong to be real with God.
Yes.
Like, the God that created us right? That knew us before, like we were even in our mother's womb, like who saved us. Like, but he's afraid of my emotions and my questions of him. Like, duh, like, no, dude, like, like bring him your doubts, bring him your questions, bring him your fears. Like we've had many moments this year where we're like, God, like I'm mad, like I'm pissed off at you. Like, then I ask for forgiveness, of course, for saying that, for verbalizing it that way. But like we're just mad. Like we're frustrated with you. Like what's going on? Because he's the only way we can be real is for him to help us grow is if we're transparent with him. And here's the thing, he knows our hearts anyway. He knows we're thinking that stuff, right? So like, why are we gonna like walk around like, oh no, I'm good, God, Like, so anyways, everybody's been talking about that. Has 2020 been your worst year or your best year? Right? Like everybody seems to believe like, has this has been like this terrible year. Well, Heather just said our faith, because of these tough seasons that we've gone through, like, and we've gone through a lot of tough seasons, just like everybody else has. Our faith has grown like unbelievably. Like we just in the last like few months.
Yeah.
So when I really sit back and think about that question, maybe 2020 has been the best year we've ever had.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying we should I'm not asking for more tough seasons, but
you can take those back.
Yeah. The only way our faith could have grown to this level is with those tests and with those tough seasons. So maybe, what God's trying to teach us is my definition of what a great year is needs to be on how much my faith has grown, not like, oh, I haven't gone through as much stuff, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
I feel like it's been our best year.
Yeah.
Do you guys mind expanding on just at least one thing that happened this year and how your faith got you through it?
Yeah,
We honestly had to figure out which one we wanted to talk about.
We had a few.
I'm sure a lot of people listening can relate to. It's like, which one do you want me to pick?
Yeah, and that's exactly, and that's the first thing I thought when we thought about this topic, like having faith in tough seasons. The first thing I would say is perspective.
Yes.
There's always somebody going through something worse.
Yeah.
Right.
There's always somebody going through a tougher season. So the challenge with sharing about a tough season you're going through is there's always somebody listening who's like, oh, that's nothing compared to, right? Like I remember hearing once, if we're all sitting in a room of like 100 people, right? Like say we're in like a meeting room of like 100 people. If everybody puts in, okay, what's the toughest thing you've gone through in 2020? And we all write it down on a piece of paper and we all put it in a hat. All right. And then we're like, okay, Heather, go pull one out of the hat. Matt, Ashley, go pull one out of the hat. I guarantee you, when you pull that one out, you'll want to go back into the hat and get yours back, right?
That's true.
Because there's probably people in like a room of like 100 plus, there's always people going through more stuff.
Right.
It's all just perspective. So, yeah, we had a really tough season in our marriage earlier this year based on some decisions and bad choices, lack of wisdom, right? We were talking about before, Matt, that I made or I did. Probably one of the two toughest seasons her and I have had in our 17 years of marriage.
And that was 2 weeks into lockdowns. COVID.
Yeah.
Oh
2 weeks.
So that was that was just for privacy's sake. We're probably not going to go into that one. Like,
that's fine.
Yeah. We'd be happy to talk to people.
That one on the shelf, buddy.
Yeah. That's, but that was a tough season, but it's made our marriage stronger than it's ever been. You know what I mean? So, we've had financial tough seasons. Obviously the whole COVID thing, we've had some family relationship tough seasons, which, some challenges with relationships that are very, very important to us. And just based on decisions that Heather and I have made, it's really hurt some relationships. We're praying that those continue to be reconciled, and they are. But
business
stuff, like moving in a different direction, like we have
ending one venture, moving into another.
But we actually have a dog tough season. Matt and Ashley kind of know that.
Say plural.
Yeah, plural. So we never had a family dog. I know Matt and Ashley are big dog people. And we were like, okay, it's time to get a family dog for us and the kids. And we adopted a rescue dog, a 10-month-old rescue dog. And we had him for like 10 days. We thought he was a great dog. We started to get, really attached to him. And then he started getting aggressive with us, and it was bad. Like we actually talked to Matt and Ashley because they're the dog people. And we were like, hey, are we crazy? Are we crazy here? Is this normal? And they're like, no, that's not normal. You probably need to, So we had to take the dog back, which our kids were completely crushed, obviously,
Yeah.
because they had, imagine having a dog for a week or 10 days, and then now dad has to take the dog away, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So we regrouped as a family, and we then adopted a puppy. And this awesome puppy, we named her Lucy, and she's
You really know what she is?
yeah, her mom's an Italian Greyhound. Her dad, who knows
No
what he
idea.
is. He just kind of came in and did his thing, and
Yep.
nobody knows what
Yeah.
much about him. But and she's a great dog. We had her for 7 days, and she got what's known as the parvovirus, which is a really deadly virus that puppies especially can get. It's extremely contagious, very deadly. Basically, it attacks their immune system in a major way. Very quickly, like within the first 3 days of them getting it, they if it doesn't get treated or start to get treated, they're probably going to die. So we, again, we had this dog, we lost, right? We had to send back, and we're like, oh great, we have this new dog, and now this dog is basically on the verge of death.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So yeah, it was rough, and then there's really nothing you can do for that virus. Like the vet can basically give them antibiotics. And so we had her at the vet, and they basically said, hey, we're going to treat her for the next 3 days. But in 3 days, either she has enough in her white blood cell count to fight this off, or she doesn't, and she dies.
It's totally up to the dog.
Like, it's totally like, there's nothing they can give her. There's no there's no medicine, vaccine. They give her antibiotics to try to just kind of maintain her.
Yeah.
Right.
Some medicine to keep
and some medicine and all that kind of stuff. So literally, like, for 3 days, every day we would get a phone call twice a day, and the vet is like,
morning and at night.
Yeah. And they told us, they were very upfront with us, and they said, hey, we've had dogs that were doing good for a day or two, and then we come in the next day and the dog's gone. So we knew every time, like, even if we got a good update one day, the next phone call could be
that waiting period.
Yeah. Oh man.
And
so
she personally had her dealing with it. This vet had a 60-40 where she had 60% make it and 40% not.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything you read, you're basically looking at a 50-50 shot.
Right.
Like, the odds are not really in your favor one way or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it was like, I mean, now, is that the same as like a maybe a family member, or, even somebody? No, it's not the same. So that's why I said from the start, it's perspective, right? We're not trying to make it seem like what we've gone through, but that's a tough emotional thing to go through. Yeah. But it's also like, hey, okay, you if you have a faith, now's the time for that faith to kick into action. And we, once we went through the emotions, right? Like, we felt what we felt, and we were okay with feeling that way, and we were honest with God about how we were feeling. We were almost like, God, like, what are we doing wrong here? Like, we just want a dog. We just want a dog for our kids. And it's just like, you keep shutting these doors, and we feel like we're doing a great thing here. And that's where he, we both kind of felt like, okay, this is where our faith, comes in. So we, like, practically, these are some good practical tips that we did. We immediately reached out to our community of support. Like, Matt and Ashley are part of that. We like, I put it on Facebook, said, hey, here's what's going on. We need some prayers. And if you guys could pray for this dog in the next 3 days, this is what's going to happen. And we gave specific things. And we started speaking affirmations. That's another big practical tip. Like, we started, speaking God's word, no weapon formed against her shall prosper. Right. Like, we started speaking those things and speaking victory in spite of what maybe we were even seeing, if that makes sense. So, like, the vet would say, hey, I'm just going to be honest with you, there's a 60-40 chance, and I've seen this dog do this, and this dog has passed away. And we would listen to the vet respectfully. And then as soon as we hung up with her, we turned to each other and say, hey, we appreciate the job that she's doing, that she's trained to do, but we don't accept that. That's not going to be our dog's story. That's not going to be Lucy's story. Right. Another thing that we did was, we kind of leaned into the fact that if God has taken you through tough seasons before, he can do it again.
Yes.
Right? Like, if you all of us have been through tough seasons, and I think all of us have at least one time come through those tough seasons. Right. So it's almost like you have to, train your mind to remember that God's taken you through those tough seasons before, and you came through it. He can do it again. And I know Ashley's, a part of the Elevation Church, right? Worship choir, right? Like, that song, they have a great song called Do It Again, right? That, like, I listen to that thing over and over, because it's like, if God's done it before, he can do it again. And then the speaking victory, like that's another song that we listen to all the time, was Sea of Victory by Elevation Worship. It's like, the weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. Right. So like the weapon had formed in the dog, but we kept speaking, it won't prosper.
Yeah.
It won't prosper.
Yeah.
And my God will never fail. Right. We started speaking those things. That was kind of like, we just felt like that was our job that we could do in this situation. We could get emotional, we could feel sorry for ourselves, we could do all that. But with every update, and some were bad and some were good, and we just kept through that. And then 3 days later they called us and they said she's eating, and we were like, oh my gosh, she's eating. She hadn't eaten in 3 days, well, probably almost a week. And we were like, okay, that's a victory. And we kept speaking that more. And then they called us like really later that day
4 hours later
and said she's ready to come home, she's totally fine. and we again we just felt like that was an opportunity in a tough season to display our faith. And we know that if that hadn't come out, and she's great, she's sitting over here now asleep in her crate, and she's an awesome dog, totally healthy. But that was a victory in a tough season that really taught us a lot about how we can respond in those situations. You know what I mean?
That's great.
So yeah.
And during all that though, like now, you can sum it up in this pretty little package and wrap a red bow around it. But like when you're in it, when you're in these tough seasons and you're in these in-betweens, I don't know about anybody else, but it was brutal for me. It was absolutely the in-between of like the start of a situation and you don't know the outcome of it. That in-between for me, and I don't know if it's just my temperament or not, but like are so hard and so painful and so raw. And I had plenty of moments that in between those phone calls, we'd get one in the morning and we'd get the progress of how she was the night before. But then you have that 6 hours that you're going during the day that you're like, okay. And it was just talk about anxiety through the roof until I got another call, that night. And how many times I couldn't handle it. And I'm bawling my eyes out. And I finally, the only thing I knew to do was to just literally get down on my knees and just start praying. Because I think some of the time, again, talking about my background in the very beginning, as a Christian, I would think, okay, God, I pray it. So you're just gonna follow through. You're just gonna answer my prayer. Right. So in this particular example, yes, our prayers were answered. Like the outcome that we were hoping for happened. But what if it hadn't happened the way we had prayed for? Right. And I think because I've had tough seasons that didn't go the way that I prayed, I think what I've learned in my prayer life is to understand who is ultimately in charge and that I have to be okay with it. And I think coming from that genuine, sincere heart in my prayer of going, okay, God, you know the outcome that I want to come from this, but I trust you. I trust your will. I trust how you want this to go and what your plan is. So whatever that plan is, I'm okay with it, but I'm not going to lie. This is really how I would like it to go. But I think getting to the root of my soul and truly believing those words that God, whatever your will is, I'm okay with it. Yeah. And I think there's just something freeing in your faith when you finally can get to that place, because I don't know how many people are in that in-between stage right now. And they are hurting, they are crying, they are like having moments of depression, they're having moments of anxiety, and you don't know whatever season you're in right now, and you're in that in between where you've gotten hammered with something and you don't know how it's going to end. We still don't know how this whole coronavirus is going to end. Like, so we all as a society are in this in-between stage, and it can be really painful and really hurtful. And I just encourage you, I just want to lift you up in prayer and give you that peace to know that whatever the outcome is, it's going to be God's will. And that might be so weird to think. And your faith level might be at a different stage. It could be brand spanking new. You just developed a relationship with God, and this is all really new to you, or you're a veteran and you've had some hard times. You've grown your prayer life. You've grown your knowledge in the Bible and going to church, wherever that season is for you. But you're in a spot right now that you're just hurting, and you're in pain. we just are comforting you, and hopefully, and that you're not alone. And just because you're hearing this podcast and you're hearing again, like it, now we can talk about it because it's over. And yes, one could look at it and go, yeah, but it kind of went the way you wanted to, so it's easier to talk about. We could sit here for another 2 hours and go through a whole list of stuff that didn't go the way that we wanted to. And still just as passionate about our faith.
Right.
So I just want to encourage you that even though you can't see the ending right now, and as much as you're hurting right now, God's got you. Yeah. He hears you. And all you can do is just lean into him and continue to pray for him. And one of the things that helps me so much, too, as a battle drill, I call it, for me, when I'm in that season, is I look up and look around me. I've learned to do that. Like, I look up and look around me, because I feel like if I just look outside, that's God's artwork. And I look at a bird, like I can look out right now our kitchen window, and there's a bird sitting on the tree, and I'm thinking, they have no idea what they're going to eat every day that they wake up. They don't know where they're going to find shelter. Yep. But God takes care of them every single day. They find their food, they find their shelter. So you're going to tell me that God loves a bird more than he loves me. So whatever season I'm in, whatever hurtful, painful time I'm going through, just look at nature and look around and see like all God has created, and to think he loves you more than that. So he is totally got you right now. Feel his hug, feel his presence, and just open your eyes and look around. Another, if you're more of a, okay, yeah, Heather, that's great, but I need something more like concrete, I would highly recommend picking up, because I'm like that too. I'm a pretty concrete person. I like my statistics and my facts and, my data.
Nature's not enough for the concrete.
Yeah, I'm growing into that person. Yeah. I'm growing into that person.
We got something for everybody.
But there is a great book by Jennie and it's called Get Out of Your Head. And the premise of the book talks about taking every thought captive. So if you're more of a concrete person and you're like, okay, great, I love nature. Yeah, that red cardinal's really pretty, but I need something more than that. Right. I would highly encourage the reading of that book, because that, during this whole thing with Lucy, every single time. So see, the enemy wants to not let you believe that you are in control of your thoughts. He wants you to believe that, no, you're not in control of your thoughts. Your situations and your feelings control how you think. And so therefore, that's going to shape everything else. It's going to shape your behavior and how you act and everything else. But the reality is, you're very much in control of your thoughts. And knowing and recognizing that is like a huge battle drill that I discovered, that when the enemy wants to creep in there and he wants me to get on Google and read all the statistics of parvo and all the puppies that did not make it,
or all the COVID cases that are going up, or all the people that are, you know what I mean? It's like, insert whatever it is.
Whatever you want in that blank for you. So for me, my blank is the parvo pup. Right. And so, whenever I would get that phone call from the doctor and saying, well, she's still not looking really good, she's not wagging her tail much, we're going to see, how she is in the morning, kind of thing. And the enemy wants to get in there and go, oh, Heather, man, like that could be, and it's like a rabbit hole, and it takes me down. And like, next thing I know, I'm depressed over all these thoughts, because I'm like, oh my gosh, she's not wagging her tail, she's still not eating. Like, what is that? Is she going to die tonight? Like, are we going to get that call in the morning? And next thing you know, I'm there. I am there. And the reality is, no, every single time that I would get that kind of call, and the enemy, and everybody knows what those thoughts are. You know what those thoughts are. It's the thoughts that you continue to think about over and over and over again on a repeat cycle, that are not positive and don't make you feel good. Those thoughts are the enemy's thoughts that he wants you to like harp on. Yeah. So when I started noticing a thought going on this repeat cycle, I'm like, wait a second, I have the power to take that thought captive. And that's what I would do. I would take that thought and I'd be like, you know what? I don't accept this. I'm not strong enough to carry this burden, but I know who is. God, I'm giving this thought up to you. Yes. I'm upset about it. I'm angry about it. I'm hurt over it, but you have the shoulders to handle this thought. I'm giving it to you. And I cannot explain to you the peace that would bring me. And still does. Now we're through the parvo, but life's got something else going on for us right now. And so it applies in everything, that no, I'm taking that thought captive, and I'm not allowing the enemy to allow that thought to take me over, to now control my emotions, to control my feelings, to control my behaviors. So I just, anybody feeling that, if that resonated with anybody, that came from the book, from Jennie Allen that I highly recommend. You get your hands on if you felt like,
Yeah, and the in between, like when Heather said that, like the
it
in
sucks.
between, that no, it does, but that's the key point. Like that's the spot where,
Right.
like
Right.
that's where the activation has to come in.
Yes.
That's where the taking thought that's where the application steps,
Yeah.
right? The battle drills, like
Yeah.
you have to, if you're out there listening, like what are some battle drills? Like go ask somebody, and we can give you some. We've already given you some, right? Affirmations and support community, journaling, right, is another one.
Journaling is huge.
Bible app, like the YouVersion Bible app.
Yeah.
Like they have these little devotionals that are like little devotionals every day, and there's actual specific topics that you can do a devotional on, like a 5-day. And it's like you read something for like, it's like takes you like 5 minutes to read a passage, a devotional, and then a piece of scripture. But it can be for certain emotions, right? Like if there's ones for anxiety, ones for disappointment, like ones for frustration. There's I just finished one on, it's called God's Presence and Promise, because I needed 5 days of knowing that, hey Billy, God is still here. He is still present. His promise is still the same for you, even though you're going through a tough season, right? And that was really helpful to have that. But in the in between is when you need you need to take the thoughts captive, right?
Yes.
You need to have that. And another thing that helps in the in between is environment matters. Environment matters. Like, one of the mentors that all of us have, Matt and Ashley, me and Heather, Noble Gibbons, I'll give him a quick plug, right? EQ for Entrepreneurs, right? They have a great podcast, EQ for Entrepreneurs. When he's the first one I heard say that environment matters. So like, what is your faith environment in those in-between times? Like one of the things that we also did, and we do in any tough season, is like, if those thoughts are up in the air and they're basically up for grabs, right?
Yes.
Like they're up for grabs between the enemy and God. Like, are you going to push those thoughts to God, or are you going to push those thoughts to the enemy? Those thoughts are up for grab. Well, one of the things that can help in that is environment. Like we would have like Pandora on with the Elevation Worship Station or the Jeremy Camp Station. Like we would constantly just in our house, right, have that on in every free moment. So whenever we're in those in-between stages where we're like, okay, like our thoughts could drift the wrong way, I'm hearing worship music. I'm hearing words sung about God's presence and his promise and how you're going to see a victory and he's going to do it again, right? So that's a huge part, is environment matters. And if you do that and you activate your faith in those moments, I don't know, it just always made me feel like, hey, I'm doing everything I can do here. Now it everything else is up to God. But if I didn't feel like I did, almost everything I could do, there'd always be that question. So the in-between is super important. Environment matters. So.
That's a back drill that no matter what stage you're at within your faith, you can apply.
Yes.
Like again, if you're like I guess I'll just call it, if you're a green Christian and you're really new to this and you're like, oh my gosh, like this sounds great. Some of it sounds maybe a little weird. Some of it might sound a little God squatty. Like I'm not quite sure I'm there yet, but like just having something like that in the background all the time,
like play some music.
Even if you're in your car and you're driving, just having it down low, like you just never know what one little, like I remember there's Empty Me. It's an awesome Jeremy Camp song that I love, and I want more of you and less of me. Like I heard it really softly in my car, but it was because this is a battle drill we do, and it was just, and as soon as I heard that, it was like I barely heard the song, but for some reason I heard that. And that has just been something that I keep constantly going in my head of like, no, I want more of him and less of me, empty me, God. Like, so you just never know those moments that God wants to talk to you. Cause see, that's the other thing I've learned. God doesn't talk loudly. He's not going to yell at you. Like he's not going to sit there. And like, if people are waiting for these aha moments of like, I'm just waiting for God to speak to me, I guarantee you he already has, but because of the negative thoughts going on in your mind, you can't hear him. Like the enemy speaks so loudly, God does not. And so if you don't silence yourself enough to allow like God to hear his soft spoken voice, if you don't provide an opportunity, an environment that allows God to speak to you. And so in that moment, like I wasn't waiting for God to talk to me. but like in that moment, I felt like he did. And it was through that song. Like you just never know, but to just quiet the noise, to find a way to quiet the noise. So for me, like swimming is still a therapy for me. I know Matt and Ashley love working out. So again, I don't know what it is for you that makes you feel really good about yourself. Like when you do it, you just feel more confident. I don't know what that is, but you do. So whatever that is, try to do that a little bit more. And when you do, it's amazing how that can soften and quiet all the noise going on in your head. Because I'm a huge thinker. I can think with the best of them. I can overthink with the best of them. So my brain is very noisy. It's very loud. And I've just really had to figure out certain things that help quiet all that noise. Because when I realized like the enemy loves yelling, but God doesn't. God doesn't need to compete. He doesn't need to compete with anybody.
He's already God.
He's already got it. So like the enemy needs to compete, which is why he talks louder. So like you gotta, once you can recognize that, and again, I'm going off a whole nother tangent here, but talking about wherever you are in your faith, I feel like this is an aspect that can apply to try to do something, whatever that is, to quiet the noise so you can hear him talking to you, because he is talking to you. I've never heard this audible. If somebody has, you rock. That's awesome. That probably was the coolest experience ever. But I have never had an audible by God of like, Heather, this is God. I want you to do blah, blah, blah. Like, I've never had that.
If she has, it was actually me playing God, like pretending like to be
very
trying to fool her a little bit.
100%. Yes. So
it was just me talking through the wall. So,
well, and I think going back into the in-between and just learning to hear and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, I know for me personally, I immediately could not hear God's voice because I immediately jumped in the pool and started taking anxiety laps. Like, you know, like I'm already in the pool. I'm going to be the best person in shape because I'm already taking anxiety laps. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know for me too, is that like most people, we have a bend to the negative. We have a natural bend towards it.
Amen.
Well, we're surrounded by it so much. That's
Exactly.
So like it's hard to hear anything else other than the negative, no matter what situation you're in.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is a whole nother point of this, is that you don't need to hop in the anxiety pool immediately. You don't need to have that natural bend towards the negative. You need to go into these battle drills that you guys just talked about and really apply them when you want to do that.
Right.
And that's hard too, because that is a natural bend for you to go to those two things immediately when something ever happens.
Yeah.
And I know that it was definitely reprogramming what I thought immediately. It was the toughest part of that, is not to jump to those conclusions immediately of going down the rabbit hole, searching this. Like, you know, while I'm searching parvo, I found out that I have something wrong with myself. You know what I mean? Like, and amazingness, you know what I mean? Like,
it's not just my fault, it's also me, you know? Like,
now I'm sick, you know, hell, I'm going to go get my doctor.
You know, can humans get parvo? Like, maybe, you know, you just that.
So
that's so good.
Yep. Awesome.
And I think that a lot of times too, is that even in what we do daily, sometimes we operate so much in theory of what might happen.
Yes.
We never really get to the true truth of what is happening or real reality. And I think that is a part of this journey as well with the wisdom, is because so many people want to operate in theory. Well, what if I do get COVID? What if I have a dog that has parvo? What if this and this? Now we're down this rabbit hole, and now we're hopping in the pool of anxiety that we didn't have to hop in the beginning because we went down this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And I think it's just reprogramming enough to how you think and what is going to be important to you in your life. And how you can stop these trains of thoughts before you go so far down the rabbit hole you can't get out, and you're continually having this negative thought pattern and this negative anxiety and just all this extra stuff that didn't need to exist if you would just stand true on going to these battle drills, and you can stop it before it ever starts.
Matt Crick for the win. It's good.
So good.
Matt Crick for the win. Awesome.
Well, no, you guys gave it to me. It just, you know, it's a part of that sharpening thing, because I came to you for wisdom so many times, it just ended up coming out. See, that's how that works. So it's all you guys.
Awesome. Appreciate it, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely.
We appreciate you guys for sure. Like, I know we could sit here and talk all day long about
we
this.
could.
It's just such good content. We really appreciate you being on the show. And so if anybody is looking to, follow you and see what you guys are up to on social media, where can they find you at?
They can find us at Billy and Heather, and we're on Instagram, and we do have a Facebook page as well it's open to anybody that you could join as well. So
Awesome.
Yep.
Cool. Well, everyone, we hope this was very helpful for you and that you learned a lot. Please share it, subscribe, rate, and review us. And until next time, own your life because your life is your responsibility. Thank you all for listening. If this added value to you, please click subscribe and rate and review us. You can also find us at Own Your Life Co. on Instagram and Facebook and ownyourlifeco.com. And as always, own your life because your life is your responsibility.